Greetings to you all. Greetings, Minister. Thank you for the warm welcome and the introduction, Tā Colin. It's really good to be here. So today I've been invited to talk about Māori data sovereignty, about the importance of data sovereignty for our aspirations as tangata whenua, and about moving from data dependency to data sovereignty. And I hope some of this will be useful to you as you progress your own initiatives for Niue and perhaps wider Pacific regional data sovereignty. And I'd also like to acknowledge the great work that's been done by my colleagues in the Pacific Data Sovereignty Network. And I guess I'm coming to this kaupapa as a wahine Māori academic at Te Whare o Waikato, as a practitioner in my own community, but also as someone who's advocated for system change in this space for some time, particularly with Stats New Zealand, our national statistics agency, and the Office of the Privacy Commissioner. So I guess for me, regardless of the pōtai or the hat that I'm wearing, this kaupapa is really about finding ways to put Māori data in Māori hands so that we can be the ones that benefit, both now and in the future. So I think that's pretty simple, and I like to keep it simple because I find that people can engage with it if we sort of put some of the jargon behind us and remember what's important. So Māori data in Māori hands. Okay, so on that note, oh, there's a picture of my dad. When I'm doing presentations, I always like to have a picture of my kids, but today I've got a picture of my dad. He's at the National Library. He's poring over a really massive whakapapa or genealogical table that we found there when we started one of our projects back in 2018. So I'll come back to why I've got a picture of my dad, but I thought I'll just pop him there at the front. So why should we even care about data? I guess the short answer to that is because we now live in an age where data are absolutely everywhere. Nearly every aspect of human life, our lives, is being digitized. All kinds of devices, from Fitbits and phones to buildings and drones, can track and analyze and store and share massive amounts of data. And the capacity to link it, to integrate it, use it and reuse it from different sources and for different purposes has expanded rapidly. And in most instances, there's no explicit permission that's sought or consent that's given to enable these data linkages and reuses to occur. So whether we participate by choice or not, with consent or not, we as individuals, as whānau, as communities, we're all part of the data revolution. And as communities, it's really critical that we have a well-informed understanding of the challenges and the opportunities that all of this presents and how we want to respond to them. Excuse me, I've got a cold, so I'm going to have to blow my nose from time to time. So in Aotearoa, there's lots of hype about the value of data and that can be unlocked and unleashed and the power of the data. And for me, when I hear these claims, I ask myself four main questions. Whose data are we talking about? Under whose control? According to whose values? And for whose benefit? And when it comes to Māori data, the government here in Aotearoa is still pretty much operating in a vacuum. I mean, there's a lot of talk about Māori data sovereignty and data governance, but there's no policy across government, including the public service, and there's no legal protection specifically for Māori data. What that means is that in a practical sense, there's all sorts of decisions that are being made about Māori data, about what data to collect, where to process and store it, how it gets used and accessed and shared. But these decisions are being made largely without transparent and accountable practices and policies that genuinely reflect Māori priorities and values and concern. And I think this is where Māori-led initiatives on data sovereignty and data governance have much to offer. So at this point, I'll just pause and go over some definitions so that we're all on the same page. And the definitions here come from the Māori Data Sovereignty Network, Te Mana Rarunga, or TMR, which is a national network of Māori with some interest in data. And you can find their principles and lots of other resources on the website. There's the URL at the bottom. And so the TMR definition of, what the heck is Māori data? Um, it's a fairly broad one, and it refers to information or knowledge that's digital or digitizable, that is about us as Māori, that is from us, our language, our culture, our resources, and our environments. And it's Māori data regardless of who controls it or where it's located. There's a lot of Māori data that is not currently in the possession of Māori communities, but it's still Māori data, and it includes raw and processed data as well as metadata. Māori data sovereignty is an extension of our sovereignty as an Indigenous peoples, and it refers to the inherent rights and interests that we as Māori have in relation to the collection, ownership, and application of Māori data. And data governance is related but different. And governance is really the principles, the legal instruments, the policies, and the frameworks through which we as Māori can exercise or try to exercise control over our data. So I think useful to have some of those key definitions there. I should note that there's increasing global recognition of the importance of Indigenous data sovereignty and data governance. I don't have time in this poto talk to list all of them, but I think one important one is the UN Special Rapporteur on the Right to Privacy. And I've highlighted in the slide some important passages from one of their reports on big data and open data. Just noting here in that report that data are a cultural, a strategic, and an economic resource for Indigenous peoples, that existing data and the data infrastructure fail to recognise or privilege Indigenous knowledges and worldviews and don't meet our current and future data needs. And the rapporteur in that report really encouraging governments, but also private corporations, to recognise the inherent sovereignty of Indigenous peoples over data about us or collected from us. So I think that was a really important statement from the Special Rapporteur. One of the things I think we do really well as Māori, and I think perhaps for communities in the Pacific as well, is if there's a problem that affects us as a people, we try to come up with solutions. So it's one thing to define the problem, that's step one. Then we need to take more steps, and that is, what does the solution look like? And that's really been the case, whether it's language revitalisation with kohanga reo and kura kaupapa, and it's certainly the case for Māori data. So there's a lot going on in the Māori data space at the moment, and I'm just going to talk about two examples, and I'm sure Andrew will have more. So the first is the Māori data governance model, and that was published in 2023 by Te Kahui Raunga, and that's the independent trust that carries out the data work streams on behalf of the Data Iwi Leaders Group of the National Iwi Chairs Forum, which was the tribal forum. And I have the privilege of working on this model with a group of colleagues. And just to note as well that we had some help from the First Nations data governance strategy team, because that international collaboration and sharing and learnings is really important. So prior to designing the model, there was a lot of consultation across Te Ao Māori and across agencies. So we had a lot of information and insights to draw on, and just to acknowledge that. So this one pager is just a high-level snapshot of the key elements of the Māori data governance model, which can be found on the TKR website really easily. I don't have time to go through all the model in depth, but I just want to share some key features. And so there is an overarching vision, tuia te korowai o Hini Raunga, which came from some of our tribal leaders, and that's really around our data for self-determination. And it's this high-level vision that enables hapu and iwi and Māori organisations and communities to pursue their own goals for cultural and social and economic and environmental well-being, and to address inequities. And beneath that are the desirable outcomes. And that's the crucial, I guess, the data for good part. So what does data for good look like? It means that we have data that supports our whānau and our families to flourish, that reaffirms and strengthens our connections to each other, to identity, to place, to our reo, te reo Māori. And there's a range of outcomes there. On the left there are the 5 values that really frame the whole model. And those values work together to guide data decision making and practices. At the centre is the one that's really important, and that is put Māori data in Māori hands. And this is really important because there's no point having a data governance model if it continues to keep Māori data out of reach. There's the second one in the top left is nurture data as a taonga, as a treasure. Data holds our knowledges and our stories, and it is a taonga and should be treated as such. Use data for good. That's a no-brainer. Data can help us make good decisions, be accountable. There's relational responsibilities that come with this taonga, and transparency and accountability are really key. And decolonizing data ecosystems. So we need, about stopping the practices that exploit and extract our information. And then there's the 8 data pou, or data pillars. And I'll just go over to the next slide. So these are really the building blocks that represent priority areas of action. And each data pou, and there's 8 of them here in the model, really defines a specific area of data governance. So you can see there's data workforce, infrastructure, collection, protection, access, sharing and repatriation, data use and reuse, data quality and system integrity, and data classification. Each of these 8 pou has their own section in the model with guidance on what to do, some examples of what good practice looks like, what not so good practice looks like, and links to resources. So it's 70 pages, there's a lot in there. It's a bit of heavy reading. So if you don't want to read 70 pages, a group of us developed a simple Māori data governance audit tool, which takes the 70 pages model and really crunches it down to 2 pages. And you can apply it to your data set or project and assess each of those data pou against criteria to see if they've been met or partially met or not met. And in this journal article here, that's the URL, we assessed the New Zealand COVID Tracer app against the Māori data governance model using that audit tool, and found that the app only met 7 of the 24 criteria. So it's quite a handy tool. Check it out if you're interested. I'll end here because time is running out real fast, with an example from my own hapu, Ngāti Tipa. So Ngāti Tipa are one of the 33 hapu or sub-tribes of the Waikato Tainui Confederation. The wider confederation has around 80,000 registered members. In the 2023 census, Ngāti Tipa numbered about 3,400, but we're small, but we're mighty and feisty. Our people are all over Aotearoa, all over the world, and our rohe, or our homeland, is in the area known as Te Puaha o Waikato, which is where the Waikato River flows out to the Tasman Sea. Since 2018, we've been developing our own data sovereignty kaupapa, growing our own hapu research team, developing our own digital repository and databases. So our first project focused on the data that was most precious to us, which is genealogical information. And these are all the data workshops that we had in our different marae. We have 3 marae in Ngāti Tipa. It's been a really massive exercise in data repatriation and digitization and integration, taking fragments of us from public repositories all over Aotearoa, bringing it back to our marae, to our own space, for us to make sense of under our own tikanga or customary protocols. We've sourced information from missionary and colonial censuses, genealogies, historical newspapers, archives, land court minutes, maps and survey plans, birth, deaths and marriages, registrations, photographs, and oral histories from our elders. And what began as a 3-year research project with modest funding has become a collective's life work. And using open source code from WebTree software, we've worked with the data scientists to create a bespoke genealogical database that has more than 800 Ngāti Tipa ancestors up to 1900. And why genealogy? Because it's a taonga for all of us, and it's a taonga that has the potential to benefit us as individuals, as whānau, and as wider collectives. So I'm just going to whiz through this next part. Oh, my slide's not moving. Because I can see that I'm getting over time. So having collected all of this data, we've created our own database and Hapu digital repository. And we've got a simple layer cake approach designed by our technologist, Vanessa Clark. And at the bottom is a digitized data layer. That's all the information that we've collected over the years. The next layer is the pātaka, which is really the physical container for all of our data. And all of the data is stored on a server in Aotearoa, owned by a local company here in the Waikato. The tikanga layer is really about our customary protocols and how we translate that into a digital environment. So it's really about access permissions, who gets to see what, under what conditions. And these have been rigorously tested with our whānau and our elders. So we've got clear lines of accountability back to our whānau. And the final layer is the applications layer, which is web-based, and we're developing our own website and had the help of a cryptographer based in Australia to make sure that it's all secure. So there's a lot going on in that space, but none of it would be possible without the support and the wisdom of our Ngāti Tipa Ruruhi and Koroheke, our elders, many of whom are shown here and who have passed on since the beginning of this project. Moi mai aku rangatira. And just to end, we've got a lot of resources that were developed from this project that are available for others, which may be of use. There's one here called Hapu Data Sovereignty, Tips for Getting Started. It's sort of a step-by-step guide to doing things, starting small, but we can still achieve really meaningful things. And just a note as well that we're starting a new online postgraduate certificate in data sovereignty and data analytics next year at Te Ngira, which I can make more information available later on. So ngā mihi nui ki a koutou katoa. Thank you, and I will stop sharing and tuku the rākau over to the next speaker. Thank you.